All right. I'll just wait for people to find me again here. Um, I guess I bumped my cord, and because my wife's Mac Air did not have power, it canceled out right away. So we're just going to continue with our little series, Leviticus. So if people are watching the last video, if you haven't watched the last video, watch that one first. Up until the part where at the end of the video, there's a little bit of a delay with my audio. And that was because I was trying to log back in. And so we'll just continue. That way, people that watch that first part can jump into this one and continue with the series. If you watch that first video already, this is just a direct continuation of Leviticus. And now that I have my Mac Pro Air plugged in, we shouldn't lose power this time. So we're going to continue on. So let's go back into Leviticus 5, and we'll just continue. We will continue with our series here. I think it's important to try and get through the entire book of Leviticus. All right. So let's just scroll down. There we go. This is what I wanted last time anyway. All right. There it is. All right, so we are in Leviticus chapter 5, and we're just carrying on here. So we talked a little bit about swearing, guilty, bring a lamb, kid of goats for a sin offering, and remember, this is the female flock. If you be not able, then we mentioned turtle doves. I'm going to continue down. Priest shall make an atonement, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, if a soul commit a trespass, a sin through ignorance, in the holy things of the Lord, like if he forgets some of the commandments, because there's a lot of them, then he shall bring a trespass offering unto the Lord, a ram without blemish. So this is a male, which is interesting, right? With thy estimation by shekels of silver after the shekel of the sanctuary, for a trespass offering. So we'll talk about this a little bit later as well. But basically, like I mentioned in my previous video, that the way I look at Leviticus is divided into three, you can argue 4 parts, which is basically it's a church, it's a hospital, and it's also a construction company, if you will, and then also a bank. So if you include all 4 parts, you basically have a nation that you're creating from scratch using the book of Leviticus. This is what we're talking about here. So in the last one, when a person committed a sin, he made a vow, he swore, and he didn't fulfill his vow or whatever, and he remembered, oh man, I made a promise, I didn't keep it. He was supposed to bring a female goat or a female lamb. So now we see if a person commits a trespass, they're supposed to bring a male, a ram, if you will. So that's a different type of animal. Not a female lamb, not a female goat, but a ram. So that's kind of interesting. So you shall bring a ram without blemish, with thy estimation for a trespass offering unto the priest, and the priest shall make an atonement for him. It is a trespass offering. So it's interesting that basically, it looks like he's selling, because of a trespass offering, a ram to the priest, and the priest would look over the ram and then accept it as an offering. He would estimate, hey, here, this is how much this lamb or this ram is worth. I'll take that off your hands. Now your sin is forgiven. Let's just go into Leviticus 7. Continuing on, and the Lord spake unto Moses, if a soul sin and commit a trespass against the Lord, and lie unto his neighbor in that which was delivered him to keep, or in fellowship, or in the thing taken away by violence, or deceived his neighbor, or have found that which was lost and lieth concerning it, and swear falsely in any of all those that a man doeth, sinning therein, then it shall be because he has sinned and is guilty, that he shall restore that which he tooketh violently away, or the thing that he has done deceitfully gotten, or which was delivered to him to keep, or the lost thing which he found, or all that about him which he swore falsely, he shall even restore it in principle, and shall add the fifth part more unto it, whom it pertaineth. All right, so people are like, what is going on here? Let's talk about this now. We're in Leviticus 6. So, yeah, so many sins, no rams left. Exactly. Hey, Darcy, how's it going? All right, so now we have an instance where somebody is borrowing something from someone and is not giving it back. It's almost like somebody lent them something and they found it. Maybe they're walking along and they're like, oh man, somebody left their cloak or whatever it is hanging on a fence or something. I'm going to take it home. And then the next day, your neighbor comes over and he's visiting with you. Again, you're having a cup of coffee, a little Tim Hortons, a little bit of donut action, maybe an apple fritter. And he's looking at you and he's like, that's my cloak. And you're like, oh, that's yours? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I found it on the road. Here you go. Or he might say, no, that's mine. My grandmother made it for me. That's mine. We brought it from Egypt or whatever. And the guy's like, dude, it's got my initials on the cloak. This is mine. So this is a scenario that could happen when they entered into the promised land. They might find a wheelbarrow or a hammer or some tools or an ox, and they might say, actually, that's my ox. And they take that ox back home and mix it in with their herd. And then maybe Farmer Joe comes by and says, hey, or Farmer Joseph says, hey, that looks like that's my oxen. That's my ox. And then there could be a bit of an argument. But the idea is he would give that ox back to that person. And then the guy would take it to the priest and say, how much is this ox worth? If I were to sell this ox to you, how much is it worth? The priest would go, you know what, this ox looks like it's in pretty good shape. Probably 20 shekels. So then he is to add a fifth to that estimate of shekels. So I don't know, don't ask me to run the numbers, but he's supposed to add a fifth to that and give that to the guy that he took the ox from and give his ox back. So that's what's going on here in Leviticus chapter 6. So again, you have an ox that you took, you saw it out in the road, maybe it got lost, maybe there was no fences back then. It wandered onto your pasture and you're like, yeah, this is my ox. Neighbor says that's actually my ox. You get an estimate as to how much that ox is worth. You give that ox back to the neighbor and you add a fifth of the cost of whatever the shekels was. So like, again, say it's 30 shekels, just using a rough guesstimate, add a fifth and give it back to the guy. So it's almost like the guy got an extra ox because of his inconvenience, if you will. He's wandering around maybe a day or two looking for his lost ox. He's like, man, I could have swore, here's the tracks, and it goes right into my neighbor's field, and I can't find the ox. Finds the ox. The guy's like, sorry, my bad. I just wanted to keep it. I thought maybe you wouldn't know. So then how much is this ox estimated at? And he's like, well, it's 30 shekels. Okay, here's your 30 shekels. Here's a fifth added to that. Sorry about that. Take your ox. So that's the transaction that's going on here. So it's interesting. Not everybody gets killed. Not everybody gets stoned to death. It's usually comes out of their pocketbook, their finances. They're being fined. They're being penalized. So if you have someone's cloak, for example, maybe somebody is working for you during the day and you're like, okay, I need you to do this job or whatever. What is your guarantee you're going to finish digging this hole? And the guy's like, well, I'll give you my cloak and I promise I'll get this job done by the end of the day. And it's like, okay, give me your cloak. At the end of the day, the guy gets the job done. He's finished, goes to the guy's house and said, hey, I need my cloak back and I need my wages for today. And the guy's like, I'll pay you tomorrow. Go away. Get out of here. I'm visiting with my family. We're busy. We're watching Friends on TV. The guy's like, man, I can't go home without pay and without my cloak. I'm going to freeze to death tonight. Dude, give me my cloak back. And this is what Jesus actually hinted at as well, I think, in the New Testament, where he says, if somebody walks with you 1 mile, go 2 miles. If someone asks for your cloak, give them your raiment as well. Like, this was very frowned upon in taking a pledge from someone, and then at night after they're done the job, that you don't pay them their wages at the end of the day, and you don't give them their cloak or their pledge back, and they're shivering at night crying out to the Lord like, man, I worked hard today and now I'm freezing to death at night. And they cry out to the Lord, and the Lord remembers them. So these are the principles that, again, this doesn't involve a stoning. Like, you steal someone's cloak or they pledge it to you, or you find an ox, you don't get killed right away. Like, people aren't just chucking rocks at everybody that moves. It's not how society works, but there's fines. Try speeding through a school zone today, and you're going to get a fine. Eventually, that fine is going to break your bank if you keep speeding. Eventually, they'll take away your license. Eventually, you'll have to take a bus to work, and that could cause you to be late. It could cause you to lose your job, all kinds of problems. This is what happens today. Back then, the fines, instead of paper, were animals. Your sheep, your goats, your various other animals. If you have birds, if you're collecting birds, turtle doves, whatever, pigeons, if you had wheat, that would affect you. It would come out of your pocket. And if you're paying fines like that, you're not growing crops for your own family. So this is why you don't steal or borrow from somebody something that doesn't belong to them, and you keep it for yourself. The penalty was to get an estimate of how much that animal was worth by the priest, and then you give that animal back to that person, plus you give them the shekels that it was worth, plus you pay a fifth on top of it as a fine. Interesting, right? All right, so let's go back to Leviticus. Let's go back to, hopefully you guys are getting something out of this. I don't know. I love Leviticus. I think it's a fascinating study. Or found that which was lost or lieth concerning it. So he's lying. He found an animal. It's like, yeah, I didn't find it. That's my animal. Swears falsely. Yeah, this was my animal. This is my clothes. This is my hammer. This is my wrench. Then it shall be, because he sinned and guilty, he shall restore which he took violently away. Probably got in an argument saying, no way, that's mine. That's my cloak. Or about which he had sworn falsely, he shall restore it in the principle and shall add. So he's going to, whatever the estimation of the animal is, he's got to give a fifth part more there too. And this came all the way back from Joseph, because I believe Joseph was the one that came up with this idea that if people were to rent out their land to Pharaoh, they would have to pay a tax of a fifth, basically, in order to eat and all this kind of stuff. So some of these transfer over to the Israelites, like stoning, all that kind of stuff. Anyways, he shall bring his trespass offering to the Lord, a ram without blemish. So now that he restored that ox, let's just say, for example, was an ox, found out what the estimate of that ox was, and then gave whatever the value was to the person. So here, trespass offering, ram without blemish, flocks that with that estimation for a trespass offering unto the priest. Priest shall make atonement for him. So now he's to give a ram as well on top of it. So now it cost him a ram. He borrowed the ox and had to pay up the fine for that and give a fifth out of his pocket. Plus, he loses a male ram. I know it sounds weird saying male ram. Ram is male. The priest shall make atonement. So it's done. This matter's done. Command Aaron and his sons. This is the law of the burnt offering, because of the burning upon the altar. Just checking. Yeah, okay. Just check my battery and make sure it's still charged. The fire of the altar shall be burning on it. The priest shall put on his linen garment and his linen breeches, and he shall put on his flesh and take up ashes with the fire which hath consumed with the burnt offering on the altar. So Moses kind of skips over to here's how you handle all these sacrifices. When they get burnt to a crisp, I want you to take them outside the camp, all the ashes, and empty them out on the outskirts of the camp. So take off your garments once you leave the altar, put on other garments, and carry forth the ashes without the camp unto a clean place. And the fire upon the altar shall be burning in it, and it shall not be put out. So the fire is never to go out. It's supposed to burn 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's kind of like us as Christians, right? We're supposed to have that fire burning in us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Priest shall burn on it every morning, and lay upon the offering in order upon it, and he shall burn thereon the fat of the peace offerings. All right, so we're going to skip down. Let's see, handful of flour. This is the meat offering. Remainder of thereof shall be sons. So some of the peace offerings you can give to the priests, and then Aaron and his sons will actually eat it. Unleavened bread shall be eaten in the holy place, shall not baken with leaven. All the males among the children of Israel shall eat of it. This will be a statute. So this is how they get fed, is by people giving some of their offerings, their trespass offerings, all this kind of stuff. This is the offering of Aaron and his sons. They shall offer the Lord in the day when he was anointed 10 parts. So then they tithe. So not only do the priests get a tithe, but they also have to tithe as well. Talks about all the details. We're just going to skip along here. Law of the sin offering, holy place. Let's see here. Let's just go on to chapter 7. We're almost a third of the way through. Likewise, law of the trespass offering is most holy, and in a place where you kill the burnt offering, shall they kill the trespass offering. So basically telling you where you kill the sacrifices and all that, and how to remove all the parts, all this kind of stuff. All right, so let's just carry on. Lots of food. Let's see here. Offering be avowed, shall be eaten the same day. So if someone volunteers to give an offering, then you're to eat it that same day. Remainder of the flesh on the third day shall be burnt with fire. So you don't leave anything after the third day. Which is kind of interesting, right? When you think about what Jesus Christ did for us. He rose again on the third day. And this is symbolic also in the book of Leviticus, where they weren't to have any of the remainder, any of the sacrifice that was offered. Like, they're not to leave anything left over on the third day, but they got to burn it, get rid of it. So there's no evidence of it after the third day. And then in the flesh that touches any unclean thing shall not be eaten, and it shall be burnt with fire. Soul that eats of the flesh of the sacrifice of the peace offering pertaining to the Lord, having his uncleanness upon him, even that soul shall be cut off. So let me just scroll down here. Eat no matter of fat or ox, no matter of fat. So they weren't to eat the fat of the ox or the sheep or the goat. So this is cattle. So if you're wondering what cattle is, the word cattle, this is cattle right here, ox. So you got male and female ox, male and female sheep, male and female goats. These are the main animals that they're sacrificing. They don't sacrifice pigs. They don't sacrifice camels, donkeys, none of that stuff. And the fat of the beast that dieth of itself, and the fat which is torn with beasts, may be used in any other use, but you don't eat it. So if there's a beast that just dies of old age or whatever, you could use the fat for oil or whatever else, but you can't eat You can't eat these beasts, and can't eat the fat, which is torn with the beast. So if a beast comes up to another animal and rips it apart, you can't eat it yourself. Don't eat. For whosoever eat the fat of the beast, which men offer, make an offering by fire, and the Lord, even that soul that eateth it shall be cut off from his people. So don't eat the fat of the beast. No matter of blood. So this gets confusing for some people. You shall eat no manner of blood. Let's talk about this a little bit. Some people get confused on this, and I'm going to pose a bit of a theory here. Let's see here. See if I can come back to us. So eating of blood. What is eating of blood? Well, it's basically eating an animal alive, inhumanely, if you will. I know it sounds weird to say that, right? But basically, you see an animal out on the road. It's like, you know what? I feel like a steak today, and you go up to that animal and you just start eating it. You kill it right there, and you're just eating the meat right off of it as it's alive. That's a horrible, detestable thing to do. Don't eat it because there's life in the blood. Same thing. Sounds weird. Don't eat people as well. Why? Because that's abomination to God. You don't eat each other. It's horrible. And you don't eat animals that are alive. So you're making them suffer. You don't do that stuff. You don't just go up to any animal and start just devouring it and start eating it. This happened with King Saul when the people were starving so bad that it got to a point where King Saul made a vow, and he said, nobody gets to eat today until we win our battle. And then his son Jonathan was faint with his armor bearer, and they were like, man, I'm so hungry right now. And Jonathan saw honeycomb, or what do you call it? Honeycomb? A beehive, if you will, and stuck his staff in it and took out the honey. All of a sudden, he's like, oh man, I feel much better. And then his servant said, by the way, anybody that was to eat is going to be killed. And Jonathan's like, my dad, he's always making these ridiculous rules and stuff. This is stupid. Doesn't he know? Look at how my eyes brighten as soon as I had some honey. Like, this is great. Like, he's doing something horrible. Like, you're supposed to, as you're defeating an army, you eat the spoils as you go. That carries you through because you basically spent calories defeating an army, and if you don't eat the spoils, you're going to starve. You're going to be faint. So this is what Jonathan was saying to his armor bearer. And what was happening was some of the men under Saul were actually, once they defeated an army, they went nuts and they started grabbing some of the cattle and they started eating them while they were still alive. And it was even offensive to King Saul. It's like, oh man, what are you guys doing? Like, no. We got to kill these things first, then you can eat them. And then we'll make a sacrifice, and I'll anoint you guys, and I'll forgive you guys, and all this kind of stuff, and just follow what I do and all this. So King Saul started sacrificing all these animals so that they can eat them, and basically atoning for their sins and all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, he was supposed to destroy all these wicked people as well, and destroy some of these sheep and all this. And a little bit later, Samuel shows up and is like, well, what do I hear? I hear all these bleating of animals and stuff. It's basically because part of it was they were probably eating and killing these animals alive. And it's a horrible thing what they were doing. And Saul tried to be the mediator, saying, look, I can be the priest, I can be the king at once. And this is one of the reasons why he got his kingdom ripped away from him, is because he thought he could take over the office of the priesthood, which is what Samuel was doing. He was trying to clean up, but he did it at the wrong time. And remember, Israel was basically in starvation mode, and they had no problem going up to an animal. Imagine 3 or 4 guys just going up to a cow, and they just start cutting it up and start eating it while the cow is alive. You don't do that. You don't eat the blood because there's life in the blood. That's what they're talking about here. So instead, you kill the animal humanely, you drain it of its blood, and then you flay it and all that kind of stuff, and you cook it and whatever you need to do. Because there are some people that eat raw meat. They have no problem eating raw meat. That's not the problem. Eating raw meat is not the problem. It's eating it when the animal is alive. Killing the animal, it's almost like death by 1,000 cuts, death by 1,000 bites. It's horrible. And there were nations that would practice this. They would have no problem going up to an animal and they would start eating the animal while it's alive. It's horrible. Horrible. All right, so let's continue on. All right. Whatever soul it be that eateth any manner of blood, even that soul shall be cut off from his people. Let's see if you guys can see this. Let me just go back to here. His own hand shall bring the offering made by fire, the fat with the breast he shall bring. The priest shall burn the fat upon the altar, but the breast shall be Aaron and his sons. So the right shoulder you shall give unto a priest for a heave offering. It's interesting, the right shoulder. There are some traditions that say that Jesus' right shoulder was dislocated when he was put on the cross. It's kind of interesting, right? All right, so let's continue down. Let's go to Leviticus 8. So now we're almost a third of the way through. I'll probably stop when we get to chapter 9. Lord spake unto Moses, saying, take Aaron and his sons with him, and the garments and anointing oil, and a bullock, which is a young bull, sin offering, and 2 rams, and a basket of unleavened bread, and gather all the congregation to the door. Moses did, said unto the congregation, this is the thing of the Lord. Moses and his sons, and washed them with water. So this is basically, he is anointing Aaron and his sons, cleaning them, washing them, and then putting on a new garment, girded him with the girdle, clothed him with the robe, and put the ephod upon him, and he girded him with the curious girdle of the ephod, and bound it onto him. So basically dressing up Aaron and his sons. He put the breastplate upon him, and also put the breastplate, the Urim and the Thummim, and he gave the meter upon the head. So this is like a crown of thorns, if you will, but it's the design is like a crown, which is kind of interesting. Like if you look up mitre, it's almost like a aloe vera tree, that type of thing for healing. So this type of branch, if you will, was woven upon the priest's head. Kind of interesting, right? Even upon his forefront. So imagine the priests having a type of crown on their head, which again, it's engraven into a golden plate, the holy crown, as the Lord commanded. And the Romans put a crown of thorns, which is a type of meter, on Christ and embedded it into his head. Crown of thorns. And this was already foretold, if you will, the holy crown, way back in Leviticus. It's kind of interesting, right? So Moses basically anointing the priests, Aaron and his sons. And then they slew the rams, the bullock, all this kind of stuff. Brought the ram for a peace offering. And basically, again, they take the bullock, his hide, his flesh, his dung. He burnt it with fire without the camp, as the Lord commanded. So the fat stays on the altar. But the flesh, everything else goes outside. Killed it, sprinkled the blood, cut the ram in pieces, burnt the head, the pieces, and the fat. So everything gets burnt. And he washed the inwards and legs. Moses burnt the whole ram upon the altar. That's right. And this was a burnt sacrifice. So the whole ram gets burnt, disintegrated on the altar. Everything. And then he brought the other ram of consecration. Aaron and his sons laid their hands upon the head of the ram, and he slew it, took the blood, tip of Aaron's right ear, upon his thumb of right hand, upon the great toe of his right foot. Aaron's sons, same thing, took the fat, the rump, all the fat, the caul, the liver, 2 kidneys of fat in the right shoulder, out of the basket, unleavened bread. And let's see, put all upon Aaron's hands, his son's hands, waved them for a wave offering. Moses took them from their hands, burnt them on the altar, the burnt offering. They were consecrated. All right, so let's just continue on here. Oil, burn with fire. Let's go to Leviticus 9. Came to pass on the 8th day, Moses called Aaron and his sons, said, take a young calf. So now you get a young calf for a sin offering, and a ram for a burnt offering without blemish. Children of Israel, take ye a kid of the goats for a sin offering, and a calf of a lamb, both of the first year without blemish. So we got all different types of animals here. Bullocks and a ram. So young bull and a ram for peace offerings. And then you got kids, as in of the goats, young goats for sin offering, and a calf and a lamb, both of the first year without blemish. It's just interesting, right? They brought that which Moses commanded before the tabernacle. This is the thing which the Lord commanded ye should do. Go to the altar. So let's just continue down here. So basically teaching Aaron's sons how to do all the sacrifices. Took the goats, brought the burnt offering. Let's see here. Blessed them. Aaron went to the tabernacle. Fire came out of the Lord and consumed. So this is interesting. So after the Aaron and his sons were consecrated, they went into the tabernacle of the congregation, came out and blessed the people, and the glory of the Lord God and the glory of the Lord appeared unto all the people, and there came a fire out before the Lord and consumed upon the altar the burnt offering, the fat, which all the people saw. They shouted and fell on their faces. So this is interesting, right? So as soon as Aaron and his sons were consecrated to the Lord, they came out and blessed the people, and then fire came down, consumed all the offering. Then when you go to 10, this is where Aaron's sons get toasted. Yeah, they do. So this is, even though we have chapter 10, this is taking place right at the same time. And Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, took either of them as censer, put therein, and put incense therein, and offered strange fire before the Lord, which he commanded them not to do. There went out a fire from the Lord and devoured them. So at the same time that this fire came down, the two sons of Aaron were actually taking some of their censer and putting fire therein and put incense in it and offered strange fire before the Lord, and they got killed. They died before the Lord. Then Moses said to Aaron, this is that the Lord spake, I will be sanctified in them that come nigh to me, and before all the people I will be glorified. And Aaron held his peace. So some people are like, oh man, this seems pretty harsh. But at the same time as this fire was coming down, these guys decided to take their censers and put some of the fire into their censers, into their censer, and offered strange fire before the Lord. So as this fire is coming down to consume everything, they got consumed as well. They got killed, fried to a crisp. How do we know this? Well, an uncle of them, of the two sons, might have been, maybe it was Aaron's uncle, came with a cloak and actually carried the bodies of these two guys. So that tells me they were fried to a crisp. There went out fire from the Lord, devoured them. They divided. Moses said to Aaron, this is what I told you. Moses called, Mishael and Eliphan, the sons of Eziel, the uncle of Aaron. So these are Aaron's uncle's sons. Come near, gather your brethren from before the sanctuary. So they were to take Aaron's sons that were burnt to a crisp out. So they went near, carried them in their coats out of the camp as Moses had said. There wasn't very much left of them. Moses said to Aaron, unto Eleazar and unto Ithamar, his two remaining sons, don't mourn this loss. Don't shave. Don't cut yourself. Don't do anything crazy right now. because you're on the job. If you leave the tabernacle, you will be killed. So don't do this. Don't mourn the loss. Basically is what Moses is saying to Aaron. Because they were just consecrated. So now if they mourn and they shave their heads and do all kinds of stuff, cut themselves, make a tattoo dedicated to the dead, like all this stuff is frowned upon. Do not do this. Uncover not your heads, neither rend your clothes, lest ye die, unless wrath come upon all the people. Like there was a chance that all of Israel could have been wiped out. Because why? These priests were separated, consecrated. And so Moses is saying to Aaron, don't mourn. Don't mourn this loss, but let your brethren, the whole house of Israel, bewail the burning, which the fire has kindled. So let them mourn the loss of your sons. Let them do that. Because they got burnt to a crisp. Let them deal with it. Let them arrange the funeral. Let them handle all that stuff. You guys aren't allowed to leave. Because we just started this. You shall not go out from the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, lest you die, for the anointing oil is upon you. And they did according to the word of Moses. And the Lord spoke unto Aaron, saying, do not drink wine. Why? Because Aaron's depressed. He has to stay in the tabernacle. He wants to drink wine to overcome his loss. It's like, don't do it. And in the future, you guys, when you're in the tabernacle, don't drink strong drink. Don't get drunk in the tabernacle because you'll die. Nor are thy sons with thee when you go into the tabernacle of the congregation, lest you die. It shall be a statute forevermore. So this is where it started, that statute of not having wine, not drinking to get drunk, because Aaron lost his two sons, and the first thing probably thought of is, man, I gotta deal with this loss right now, and I can't even leave, I can't even mourn. And God is saying, don't drink any wine or any strong drink. Don't get drunk. And this is the idea behind this, is you may put a difference between holy and unholy, between clean and unclean. They may teach the children of Israel all the statutes that the Lord had spoken unto them. And Moses spake to Aaron, sons were left, take the meat offering made by fire, eat it. So continue with your office. Like, don't stop because you lost two sons. And ye shall eat it in the holy place. So let's just go down here. So the next day, the next morning, Moses diligently sought the goat of the sin offering, and behold, it was burnt. And he was angry with Eleazar and Ithamar, the sons of Aaron, which were left alive, saying, wherefore have you not? So he's scolding these two sons, eaten the sin offering in the holy place, seen as most holy. And God hath given you to bear the iniquity of the congregation. So they were to eat the sacrifices that were coming in, just like I mentioned earlier in this video, to make atonement for them before the Lord. But they didn't feel like eating because inside they were mourning the loss of their brothers. Same thing with Aaron. Behold, the blood of it was not brought within the holy place, yet ye should have indeed eaten it in the holy place that I commanded. Aaron said unto Moses, behold, this day they have offered their sin offering and their burnt offering before the Lord, and such things have befallen me. I just lost two sons. And if I had eaten the sin offering today, should it have been accepted in the sight of the Lord? It wouldn't have been accepted. Why? Because he was mourning. And he was bitter. This goes all the way back to Cain offering a sacrifice to Abel. And I'm going to end this here. So, and when Moses heard that, he was content. So let me just come back here. Come back to me. So Aaron is basically saying, look, I just lost my two sons. I lost my appetite. Sorry. And Moses is like, okay, I get it. I understand. I get it. And if you go back to Cain and Abel, Cain was wanting to murder Abel, and he brought his sacrifice to God. And God's like, I don't accept your sacrifice. And Cain's face, his countenance was so wroth. It wasn't just because of the sacrifice. It was because he was jealous of his brother, and he had intention to kill him. He wanted to murder Abel. And God said, I'm not accepting your sacrifice. Because look at your thoughts. If you clean up your thoughts, if you master it, won't your offering be accepted then? Cain wouldn't accept that. So God is basically saying to Cain, the reason why your offering wasn't accepted is because your face is downcast. You are thinking about murdering. You're jealous over your brother Abel, which I accepted as offering. Look at your face right now. It's downcast. It's like you need to master this. Otherwise, its desire will be to rule over you. So the next day, Cain takes Abel out into a field to have a talk with him and kills him. So that's why his offering wasn't accepted, is because he had murder on his heart. Jesus talks about that. He says, like, when you have aught against your neighbor, don't bring your offering before the Lord. Why? It's not going to be accepted. This is why you're not supposed to go to bed angry with your spouse, with your wife, with your husband. Deal with that. Don't go to bed angry. Deal with it. Or if you have to, you can just say, hey, let's deal with this at another day. I'm just not in the right frame of mind, but I love you. I forgive you, all this kind of stuff. Then you can go to sleep. Interesting, right? All right. So let's see here. Let's see what people are saying. We're ending here, so I'll continue on a little bit later. Staying a bit before going to spend time with dying sister. Whoa. Please pray for the Lord to take her sister's hope and prayer. She's asking, why is it taking so long? Wow, that's sad. Sorry to hear that. Let's see here. Let's see if I can go to full screen here. All right. Wondering what happens to our fur babies at the rapture. Are you talking about animals? Wondering what happens to fur babies. All right. Not sure what fur babies are. Maybe you're talking about our animals. Not sure. Our pets, all that kind of stuff. Really hope they get to come. Yeah, I get it. I have a pet dog. Wiener dog. I have a pet dog. So I sometimes wonder if Paul hints at that kind of stuff when he's talking about in 1 Corinthians, where he talks about there are basically celestial bodies, terrestrial bodies, and everyone has its own body, if you will, which is kind of interesting when he's talking about the resurrection and stuff. And he talks about everything, the stars, the moon, everything having its own body and all this stuff. I've thought about that, what happens to these animals and all this, because obviously in the Millennium Kingdom, there's still animals around and all this kind of stuff. Interesting thought, though. Very interesting thought. But kind of interesting if all your puppies somehow came back. I know that's kind of weird, but people think about this stuff. They think about their animals. They lose their pet bird. They lose their cat, their favorite dog, all this kind of stuff. What happens in the resurrection to all our animals? Do we still have pets? All this kind of stuff, right? I know people think about this. It's interesting, right? Interesting stuff. Fur babies. That's funny. Never heard of that called that before. Anyways, hope you got something out of Leviticus. I know we can go long on that. I'll probably make this like a 2 or 3 part series. I have a massive headache right now. I think the barometric pressure in Calgary is just going through the roof. Like, it's really warm today compared to a couple of days ago when we had snow. Just every once in a while, I'll get that. And it only seems to happen in Calgary, where it's just the sinuses just get like they're going to explode. It's crazy. Anyways, yeah. So I hope you guys read Leviticus today. Start diving into that book. I think it's actually one of the more amazing books in the Bible. I know people say, oh, all books are amazing. Yeah, I know, but not everybody reads Leviticus. I'll be honest. Not everybody reads it. They just skip over it. And I think there's a lot of golden nuggets in Leviticus. And I've read it, like I said, 12, 13 times in the last 2 years. And I'm now just beginning to scratch the surface of what's going on in Leviticus. So we'll be talking a little bit more about how to deal with homes, how to deal with leprosy, which is kind of interesting as well. All the different skin diseases, all kinds of stuff going on. And then we're going to finish up also talking about banking, because a lot of people are thinking Leviticus 27 is about human sacrifice, dedication to the temple, and all this kind of stuff. And really, it's about commerce. Chapter 27 is about commerce, so we'll talk about that in another video. Anyways, yeah, thanks for that. I appreciate it. Probably go pop an aspirin or something, or some Advil and some water. I think I'm down a quart of water right now. I've had a lot of coffee this morning, so maybe that's it too. Not enough water. All right, thanks guys for hanging out. I'll see you guys in another video. And tomorrow night we have a round table talking about CERN, which is kind of interesting when you do a bit of a deep dive on that organization. Wow, there's so much stuff going on there. But we're going to do that tomorrow night, 6:30 Mountain Standard Time, so join us. Anyways, thanks again, and we'll see you in another video. Bye for now.